the 2005 Van Ivra Lecture, the 9th in this distinguished series that stretches back to 1996. My name is Karl-Henrik Robèrt. I'm the president of Northland College, and my first very pleasant duty this evening is to introduce our very special guests tonight who are joining us this evening. I will introduce them without making them stand in place, but I would like you to know that Northland College trustee Mary Van Ivra and her daughter Kitty are here with us tonight. Former trustee Dave Zentner and his wife Margot. Ashland City Mayor Fred Schnook and his wife Darlene. UW Extension Coordinator Jane Silverstein. Ashland City Councilor Mary Raywald. And Washburn City Mayor Irene Blakely. Thank you all for being with us tonight. Next, I have the distinct honor to introduce to you Dr. Karl-Henrik Robèrt. Dr. Robèrt joins 8 previous Van Ivra lecturers who since 1996 have honored the legacy of Bill Van Ivra by engaging Northland College students, faculty, staff, and the broader Shawamekan Bay community in bridging environmental teaching and research with application and with action. Past speakers in this distinguished series have included Vandana Shiva, Gary Snyder, Terry Tempest-Williams, and David Orr. Dr. Robèrt is one of Sweden's foremost cancer scientists and the founder of the Natural Step, an international non-government organization that promotes a scientific consensus approach to arrive at social, ecological, and environmental sustainability. He's trying to help us work together to treat our environment more carefully. The Natural Step grew out of Dr. Robèrt's understanding as an oncologist that the health of the cell in the human body is a primary indicator of the health of the entire planet. The Natural Step network of scientists has developed a scientifically based framework for strategic planning to achieve sustainability. The structure is being used to coach a growing number of key decision makers in government as well as business, and provides forum and tools to share best practices. The Natural Step has been used with great success by such organizations as Home Depot, Nike, Interface, Mitsubishi Electric, IKEA, and even McDonald's, as well as at educational and governmental organizations throughout the world. Dr. Robèrt has published a number of books and scholarly articles on environment and on sustainability. In 1999, he won the Green Cross Award for International Leadership. And in 2000, he earned the Blue Planet Prize, the Nobel Prize, if you will, for ecological sustainability, sponsored by the Sahi Glass Foundation. In 2005, Dr. Robèrt was awarded the Social Responsibility Laureate Medal, award by the Global Center for Leadership and Business Ethics. Closer to our own homeland here in the Northwoods, Dr. Robèrt's insights into the connection between human health and the health of the planet have influenced the eco-municipality movement in Washburn and in Ashland, and one day soon up in Mayfield. Dr. Robèrt represents our third and most prestigious visit from Swedish representatives in just the last 10 months. For that, Northland College is extremely grateful, and I'm proud to say that the college is working to adopt the Natural Step as part of our own environmental management system. Is indescribably proud to be located in this special place. The Shawamekan Bay has been identified as one of 4 regions in the United States to establish the first generation of eco-municipalities in the United States. This coming May, a Northland College class will travel to Sweden to see firsthand how these models operate. In June, a government, business owners, and community group will also travel to Sweden. If you're interested in either of these previous trips, please sign up as you leave the hall today. What a great pleasure, and I have a feeling a very momentous event we will look back on 10 years from now and say, do you remember the full moon night when we were able to welcome Dr. Karl-Henrik Robèrt to Northland College?
We had some very small technical problem here, don't worry. Probably you guys are, even despite that problem, wondering what this guy, sounding like the crazy chef of the Muppet Show, is doing up there. But, and in a way, I was a little bit hesitant about that myself when I was heading towards this area, until I started to see all the Swedish signs, Swedish names, naming buildings. And I saw the environment, which is very much like being back home. And I also felt the atmosphere of the population. It was very much like in Sweden. I told my friends earlier today that I felt like traveling for ages only to leave the aircraft and being surrounded by Swedes, all of them speaking English. Quite an exotic endeavor. Maybe it has got something to do with the cold climate and the need to be social, to take care of one another. Maybe. Anyhow, it has been a very, very warming endeavor, and I want to thank the college so much for sponsoring this and organizing it. And I also want to thank you dearly for the work you've done long before I came here, and the boldness by which you are doing it, and also the success. You bring in students from all around the United States, and the theme is the environment. So I want to congratulate you. Previous to today, we have run a workshop whereby we have been quite technical about how to plan for sustainability. This presentation will show those slides as well, but I will not go very, very deep into those slides. This is not a study moment, it's quite late at night. What I will do is more bring about the story, why this happened and how it happened. And then for either one of you to pick up that particular aspect of my story that you would like to learn more about. And in this community, you have so many facilitators and professionals that you can turn to and ask for help if you need to learn more. So this is about the latter step, which I founded 16 years ago in Sweden. And it says planning for success. And success in this case means sustainability. And this is the challenge of our time. It is not one of many and so forth. It's the main challenge of our time. And for leaders, there will be no aspect of the future that will have a stronger influence on business and on the outcome of their respective organizations than sustainability, because it is about survival. Many people believe that this is about values in competition with other values. But sustainability is not that. Sustainability is what is underpinning everything, including all other values. So no matter what values we have, they will go down the gurgler unless we can create a sustainable society. So it is not about values on that level. On that level, it is about competence. So many people say, I don't care about that because I have other values. Means that this person probably has strong values but haven't understood what sustainability means. The 90 step is now on all continents. We have offices in 12 countries. So we have more than a display of that map. It's because I'm a very poor hacker, so I didn't know how to enter that and bring more. That we will do that later on. We're working on it. Our modus operandi, what we really want to do is to train role models to become very clever. And what is that? It means that the businesses we train and the local governments we train are coached to become more successful than their competitors, also with regard to the bottom line. Because if those who pay attention to sustainability issues, social and ecological sustainability, are systematically spending money out of ethical reasons, that they will not get return on investment, then those people will systematically be poorer than the others, and then we will lose this game already up front. So the name of the game is to coach role models to become stronger economically, because they understand the outer context of the social system and the ecosystems better than their competitors. Again, bringing us back to competence. This is the problem we are encountering. We can refer to this as reductionism. Reductionism is a term meaning that we study one detail at a time instead of studying the whole system. And scientists are obsessed with reductionism. They are studying all those details, becoming more and more clever, and then they forget how the whole situation is interconnected, how the whole system connects. That is reductionism. And this is sad, because the details don't make sense until we understand the whole system. Only when we understand the whole system, the details really make sense. And this is then transferred, this obsession with detail is then transferred to mass media as polarity. We already see polarity all the time. So my idea when I started the Natural Step was to, instead of that, start an organization that would systematically seek what we can agree on. So I would ask scientists around and politicians and so forth, let's seek together in curiosity what we can agree on, and just add that as complementary to all this polarity and all this disagreement. At the level of society, this is called compartmentalization. The reductionist correspondence at the level of societal structuring is called compartmentalization or sectorization. It means that each expert group is drilling drill holes deeper and deeper into knowledge until only the soles of their feet are sticking up. And their heads are so deep down in knowledge that they don't have a clue what the others are doing. And it is from those drill holes all the controversy channeled to mass media is coming. So today scientists say we will all die from this, and then a whole bunch of scientists are saying that these scientists don't know what they're talking about. It's the opposite way around. And we buy both those papers, of course. Now, the drill holes is so sad because we need an overview, comprehension. And that requires a framework by which we can bring the drill holes together, by which we can make better use of what the experts are finding out deep down in those drill holes. So we need some kind of structured overview. And when I founded the Natural Step 16 years ago, it didn't exist. There was no such framework. So, consequently, all the tools that were developed to deal with sustainability were confusing too. We have, in fact, from those drill holes, evolved so many tools to deal with sustainability that people started to say, I don't understand this, even the tools are confusing, actually as confusing as the issue itself. So I decided to go for a scientific consensus. And the story is the following. I realized that in order to find a comprehensive framework by which all those scientists could agree, I need to start the process. And I intended to bring about a scientific consensus and send it to every Swedish household, bypassing mass media, and send it directly from the scientific community. And my dream was to make a sort of booklet and an audio cassette, a sort of present to every Swedish household, And it was a dream that I couldn't get out of my head. And eventually this daydreaming evolved into a plan. And I sat down by my computer and I wrote a beautiful consensus document with myself. I had complete consensus with myself that this must be the truth, right? This is how it all works, this is sustainability, and so forth and so on. And I sent it out to all kinds of other professors from different fields, toxicologists, ecologists, economists, and so forth. And for one professor to receive the truth from another, it is irresistible to find all the errors and flaws, and they all did. So it came back to me with all the flaws and all the errors I had done, and all the superficial knowledge I had on their particular arenas. So I sat down with all that, ashamed of myself, and authored another version. And after 21 versions, we had complete consensus. In the midst of this process, I turned to one of the most beloved entertainers in Sweden at that time, Lill Lindfors. And I have 3 friends, ice hockey players here, and they know who Lill Lindfors is, though she's a bit older than they are. She was extremely popular at that time. And she can dance and sing at the same time. That made me look anyhow. I don't know her. I just phoned her up and said, hello, my name is Karl-Henrik Robèrt. I'm a cancer scientist, medical doctor. And I would like to engage in a scientific consensus process and launch at the global level what we agree on. And she asked me, are you a medical doctor? Yeah. And what I intend to do is to send a booklet to every Swedish household about what we agree on, and send it to every school as well. And I would like you to, help us. That sound is a bit disturbing. Maybe I'm too close to this. Shall I stand a little bit? Yeah. Let's try this instead. So maybe we could launch the mailing of this booklet with a sort of celebration in Swedish TV. Would you like to partner up with me on that? I said, are you really a medical doctor? She said, because this was such a strange idea. So I told her, well, you see, here at this ward, this cancer ward, I see an endless stream of cancer diseased children and cancer patients with cancer. And we are doing bone marrow transplants here. So I'm heading a clinic that is the reference clinic in Sweden for bone marrow transplantation. And there is no limit to how wonderful people are when it is about saving or supporting their dear ones into the future. Mothers and fathers can put up with any amount of psychological torture to make that happen. And in that process, they become so strong that they can support the personnel. So I'm a medical doctor, I'm trying to do this for my patients, and sometimes it's so tough, particularly when it happens to children, that you are completely helpless. All adults are completely helpless when it is about children in this position, which some of you, by statistical reasons, are fully aware of. And the personnel needs support. And that support very often comes from the parents who are suffering more than anybody else. So it is like when people need to be strong, they just grow. And I told Lill Lindfors this, and then she got it. Okay, I understand, you're a medical doctor and you want a consensus about sustainability. And I said, yes. Because outside the hospital, I see how unsustainability goes on. And the medical community will be helpless if that goes on. And today, this wonderful species, humans, are spending millions if somebody gets pain around the nose and start to stagger. The others spend millions and millions to make that person healthy. That's wonderful. And that same species is destroying its own habitat. This can't go on. And we are just confused talking about details. Please, let's help each other. So she phoned up another of other entertainers and they merged forces with me. And then I turned to TV1, Channel 1, Sven Melander, who was at the time heading it, and I said, me and all those entertainers and all those scientists, blah, 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 could we get broadcast time on Swedish TV if we succeed? And he said yes, and laughed because he didn't think that we would pull it off. And neither did I, by the way. But I had a feeling that I must try, I must run my head into the wall, and then I will write a book on why it failed or whatever. And then I went to the Swedish government, Department for Education, and I said, me and TV and all those entertainers and all those scientists and so forth, would you like to have this education material free of charge to all Swedish schools? And they said, how can you afford that? And I said, that's not the issue. The issue is, if we succeed, would you like to have it? It would be a consensus document and so on. And they said, yeah, could you have a questionnaire in it so that it would fit schools? And I said, of course. I took notes. And then I went to the Swedish king. And I said, me and the government and all those scientists and so forth, would your majesty like to patronize this, be the patron of it? And he said yes. And then I went to the sponsors and said, me and the king and the government. We're running a little project here. And that made it possible to finance this. So actually, 9 months after the idea, the mailbox opened in every Swedish household, in every school, and we had a kickstart of the natural step. And then I was invited to a number of Swedish universities, and then it spread to universities at the global level. I turned to businesses and I said, we agree on this. Can you make some business out of this? And if you do, we will publish how smart you are. So they did. And then it spread to international businesses as well, and it spread from some Swedish municipalities along to a number of municipalities around the world. So that was very, very nice, and that scientific dialogue is just going on. The consensus dialogue between those stakeholders and actors is going on, and we are publishing the results. And recently, a few days ago, I told Lynn Roberts, who is heading the Natural Step office in New Zealand, that I'm going to this area, and I explained all the wonderful things you are doing. And she said, oh, we already know, it's already up on our newsletter, and I didn't know. So these days, things happen that I'm not aware of in my own organization. So it may look nice to see a number of organizations, these are only a few, working with us, but looking at that slide may also raise some eyebrows here and there. Do they also work with you? For instance, hydropolymers, that is a main producer of PVC in our part of the world, and Greenpeace hates them and so forth. And what we then must explain is that we can't work with a company. A company is not a person that you can say hello to. A company is a bunch of people. And in each company there are good people who really want to change things, particularly when they are ashamed of things. And to merge forces with them, teach them and make them stronger as change agents is exactly what we would like to do. And in a university, we have exactly the same ethical rules as a university. It's unethical to turn people down who seek knowledge and who want knowledge. On the other hand, we don't partner up with companies and claim that they are good. That would be a risk for us. We just teach organizations here, and then we publish the smart things they do. And then to planning complex systems. Why should we do this? Why is it important? Why do we need to understand all of this and come up with the drill holes? Well, the reason is that we are running out of life-supporting systems. The problem is not that we have lost some crop land at the global level. That's an environmental issue. It could be compared with all kinds of values and so forth, if it's worth it or not. But it is a sustainability problem that society is so organized all the way down to the bottom and basic level that we will systematically lose more and more crop land as we go on. That's, of course, a sustainability problem. It is in the same way we are losing more and more forests and biodiversity, more and more fisheries. Gases influencing climate is systematically increasing. We are systematically increasing pollutants, and we get more and more people on Earth, and the gaps between the haves and the have-nots are systematically increasing as well. This is unsustainable. The end point of this, if it will be allowed to go on, is a republic of grass and insects, preceded by barbarism. And we have complete scientific consensus on that. As long as these inherent unsustainable activities go on, there is no future. Of course there will be a future, of course we will fix it, but not without effort, not without paying attention to this. So there is a difference between sustainability on the one hand and nice social or ecological behavior on another. And there is a difference, by symmetrical reasons then, to unsustainability on the one hand, and some impacts in social systems and environmental systems on the other. And I emphasize this because many people believe that sustainability is promoted by some dreaming visionaries, unrealistic, who think that in the future lions will hug lambs. Crazy ideas of this kind. It's a humble request for survival of civilization. And the funnel can be studied more in details. We can put numbers and modulate it. We have declining things such as resource availability, restorative capacity, and so forth, because of destruction of the environmental system. And then we have increasing demands due to population increase. The developing world righteously want more of the cake, so they are putting more pressure on the planet as well. The market pressure is increasing, and therefore regulation is going up. If you just look just in the United States, the number of laws that are taken because of this have expanded exponentially. And if you think that that is a lot in a country that doesn't like big brother government much, you haven't seen nothing yet as regards what will happen later on. We have to do these things. If I would pick one item on that picture that I fear the most, it is the last item on the declining axis, the stories of meaning. The stories of meaning are those stories that bring cultures together. Those stories of meaning is the glue between people and cultures. What we hear grannies say around the fireplace, and that we recognize other people saying as well. That story of meaning represents us. It's us. And it's our leaders, if we can trust, that they have that same story implanted in their heads. And when those stories of meaning are eroding at the global level, the corresponding aspect eroding is interpersonal trust. Because if we cannot trust that others have the same story of meaning in their heads as I have a tendency not to trust people. So people I meet in the street and that I don't know, and who I don't know, maybe I don't trust those people. And that erosion of trust is going in a downhill course around the globe. It's everywhere. Even in Sweden, though we are a little bit behind in this competition. So interpersonal trust is relatively high in Sweden, but it's eroding there as well. But it's eroding faster in France, UK, and also in this country, actually, unfortunately. And once we've understood the funnel, business people immediately realize the strategic opportunity. I ask you, systems thinkers, you see, when it comes to systems thinking, the individual mind is tailor-made to be a super genius. Every person in this room is a complete super genius when it comes to comprehend extremely complex issues and compute extremely complex information with different dimensions at the same time. That's what you do when you learn your first language. A nice face is leaning over the cup where you are lying, and then a flow of sounds is poured over you. And from this position, everybody in this room has decodified his or her first language, which is an amazingly complex issue. You can't even ask yourself, what does that sound mean? Because you don't have that language to even formulate that phrase. Or when you run your cars and traffic systems, play the piano, whatever you do, it requires immense capacity to compute complex information. But the sad story is that though individuals are so smart, groups of people are generally dumber than the dumbest participant of the whole group when it comes to complex systems. It's like having one person down by the gas pedal in the car, another is holding the steering wheel, another is managing the clutch, somebody else looking to the behind, and somebody else is looking ahead, and this team doesn't even agree where to go. And therefore, it's extremely important to get that framework again, which brings me back to that. But if I ask individuals, not boards and management teams, but if I ask individual businesses, what do you think will happen to prices on resources as we lose them in this fund? What will happen, for instance, to the price on lakes, fresh lakes with pure fish stock in them? Do you think that prices will go up or down as we lose them? And when there will soon be 11 billion people bidding on the remainder in this system? To wait for an answer is an insult. It is that understandable, right? What will happen? What will happen to insurance costs if you're part of the problem? What will happen to waste management costs, toxic waste? What will happen to your reputation? All of these things and many, many more will surface. And many business people today believe that the only rationale for going sustainable is to be rewarded by the market. So they consequently, since they have that flawed belief in their heads, they don't believe that they can invest more than they can get return from the market right now. But the main incentive to do this is to avoid costs. The costs for energy or wasting these resources or doing errors and being part of the problem will skyrocket exponentially. So that encapsulates the whole strategic thing. Make money now in a way that will make it possible to make the most of tomorrow. Play chess by launching investment moves that will not only bring return on investment now, but also make it possible to launch further investment later on to avoid being part of the problem. So that we at least can make it to sustainability. And then we can become restorative, producing gardens of deserts, purifying lakes, but we must at least put an end to further destruction of the two commons, the ecosystems and the social web. The next question that scientists could be helpful about was to elaborate on how can we plan in complex systems, how can it be done? And the sad story is that the normal way of doing it is called forecasting. It means that you look in the rearview mirror if you are groups larger than 5, such as management teams. You see trends, and then you try to foresee, based on those trends, what will happen in the future. But then you see a lot of problems that will come with that trend, so then you fix those problems. I mean, no individual would be that dumb. I mean, if you want to plan ahead, you must of course know where you want to be. I mean, this planning methodology is like saying, I was born in Miami, then I lived for a while in Atlanta, and now I live in Ashland. It seems like I'm heading north. I mean, that's not how you are thinking, this is not how you are planning your lives. You don't try to foresee your lives, you're planning your lives, you're looking ahead. You have what you want there. You have certain principles, values that you're not negotiating with, and these are my interests. And then you play life by adding on to your experiences those things that fit what you see ahead of you. And then every now and then you glimpse in the rearview mirror for the trends or maybe some mistakes you've done so that you don't repeat them. So what you do is called backcasting. And the reason why what everybody in this room does, which comes so natural to you as geniuses you are, must have a technical term for big groups to do it. When groups are larger than 5, you have to consciously do backcasting. This means that you are looking to the whole system, what is it I want, and then you systematically go for it. Why is it called backcasting? Because you have your imagination, your success already. And then you think backwards in time, what shall I do over there today to make it here tomorrow? That's why it's called backcasting. And it is the primary definition of strategy. You cannot be strategic if you don't know where you want to be. Actually, the army is doing this all the time. Tomorrow, that hill is ours. What shall we do now to make that happen? And then you can be strategic. They are backcasting from victory on that hill. Businesses should do the same, of course. There are 2 ways of doing it. One is to think about Ashland quite much in detail. And on that tree of details, you can see that there are texts on each leaf. Only to symbolize that there are many, many aspects of what you might like in the future. It's like playing jigsaws. Very difficult to agree on details. Furthermore, most people don't want to lock their minds into an exact image of the future. What is much more intuitive, what you do in your individual lives, is that you rather play chess. There are certain principles that are guiding you. And then you make your moves to comply with those principles. For instance, that family wanting to move from Atlanta to Ashland, even if they've never been there, they know what to do. Number 1, the living must be somewhere close enough to our working place. Number 2, I must be able to afford it. Number 3, it must meet the minimum requirements of my family. It must be indoor climate, good enough, and it must be for sale. No other principles. Everything else is about details to comply with those principles. And the individual brain and groups smaller than 5 are so smart that they don't need a checklist to understand this. And therefore, it's extremely unusual that somebody would end up in New Jersey trying to figure out what went so wrong with this project if you were going for Ashland, right? Or in a castle you can't afford more than a week. We don't screw up on the basic principle level that defines success. Only groups larger than 5 do. So we started to ask ourselves in this consensus process, so what are those principles? So that we don't need to fix one problem after a time, but actually can design the problem out of the system. So first of all, we have to come to grips with how is it possible to live there at all? And I have never learned so much in my life as together with those scientists when we were sitting there scrutinizing each other's, and particularly my first paper that I sent out, and then we met each other and I authored a new one. You see, it's beautiful. The sun is shining on plant cells, and plant cells take waste from our cells and the cells of animals and process them back to forests and plants. Therefore, the system is pure. But we don't do that. We need to eat sandwiches and have fuels for all kinds of things, which creates much, much more waste than creation. For instance, if you just think of a child growing from 6 kilos to 7, or 6 pounds to 7, or whatever, what do you think? Do you think that it is enough with 1 kilo of food then? I mean, if you do, you've never been in a neighborhood of a child. Where does the rest go? If it only creates 1 kilo waste, growth, where is the remainder? Waste. We would soon be flooded in a completely impure system without anything at all, no natural resources, unless the sun were shining on plant cells, taking all that waste and processing back to resources. Our cells cannot use sun directly, so we are hanging on due to the plant cells, producing waste all the time, but that is reprocessed. Now, from a biological point of view, and here I could fascinate the ecologists and toxicologists and so forth, because our cells are very, very similar to plant cells, because our old ancestors were plants. Even genes we have in common. And if we look at our bodies and our cells and compare them with chimpanzees, more than 98% are identical. The genes, the blueprint for who we are, which some people find embarrassing. Others find it to be a sort of relief, but it is nevertheless true. So we are part of nature. We are part of nature ourselves, though we have a tendency to stand on the other side of the fence, asking ourselves how much is worth. But on this level, we are part of nature ourselves. Not on the spiritual level, but on this level, we are created that way. And it has been scientifically proven that even politicians are made of cells. And we are all part of this, you know, and the Pope and macroeconomists. So we have all the reason to pay attention to the system. And it is those cycles that created what we refer to as nature. This is a creation film. Starting to the left, the virgin soup of the atmosphere was a completely toxic, worthless waste dump of molecules swimming around themselves, completely worthless. And the same was true in the sea and the water systems that eventually evolved. 1 billion years after that, there is 1 billion years between each event on the evolution axis here. 1 billion years after the Earth was created in the solar system, the first cells appeared on the sea, cyanobacteria. 1 billion years after, we have colonies. 1 billion years after that, the first plant cell evolved. 1 billion years after that, the first animal cell appeared on the scene, and then moved up. And then the mobility started in the system. And that created a boost in the creation of natural systems. So only 0.5 billion years after that, we can watch out the window and see what happened. What has happened in 3.5 billion years? We have, the cycles of nature have transferred a completely useless mess of molecules into what we refer to as nature. And it has, as a secondary consequence, it is pure between all those species and creations. Because all the matter is concentrated and structured into something very meaningful. Our bodies and the bodies of trees and so forth. A surplus of matter, that was not useful for life was deposited into the Earth's crust. How can we destroy that system? And now we will be very quick because there are so many experts in this community and the technicalities, as I promised you, we don't need to go into too much. But there are only 4 ways by which we can destroy the system at the basic principle level. One way is that society today, with its companies, local governments and so forth, is so designed that it allows mined materials to systematically increase in concentration in the system as pollutants. But we never say that. We never talk about that basic design error. Instead we say sulfurous acid rain, phosphates in lakes, carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, cadmium in kidneys. And then we send out the experts in their drill holes studying each of these impacts one by one, but without any connection to the basic flow of design. The second one is that we allow also chemicals to increase. But we don't say that. Instead, we talk about the consequences of those chemicals that are known as deleterious. And, oh, oops, bad luck, another one is appearing. But as long as we are so designed that we allow chemicals to increase in concentration, it's inherently unsustainable. And we just continue to hit us as impacts, very costly such. But we never say that. We say PCB, EDT, diamonds, freons, phthalates, chlorpyrifines, bromine organic compounds, anti-inflammatories, dioxins, and keep on adding those problems instead of coming to grips with the basic design flaw. And the third is that we are systematically removing natural systems as well, with bulldozers, chainsaws, digging machines, and far too big fish boats and irrigation systems. We are simply transforming the natural systems physically as well into more and more waste. And the fourth is that we are not, in spite of this, not successfully meeting human needs at the global scale. We are actually acting in a way that destroys the capacity for people to meet their needs, particularly in other parts of the world, where we don't pay enough social costs for resources we import, and so forth and so on. And this creates reverse evolution. So now we are going in the other end. So after creation period, according to the Bible, it was much, much faster. According to the scientific creation model, it took 3.5 billion years. But that does not change anything of the reasoning as such. We are now having reverse evolution. From a creation period, huge, long creation period, whereby we have concentrated and structured matter to meaningful things, we are now again losing forests and turning it to waste. We are losing cropland, turning it to waste. We are allowing toxins to increase in concentration. Well, reverse evolution, and it goes fast. So this makes it possible for us to design basic principles of design that are the same for all kinds of organizations, regardless of what they do and the scale of what they are doing. So any company can look through the front screen of this journey and say, we at Electrolux, I, as a mayor of Tokyo, whatever you are looking at, every organization can say, in the future, I am not contributing to the first problem, I am not contributing to the second, the third, or the fourth. And by asking that primary basic design question, the answers become completely different to the questions at the level of the leaves, or the foliage, the detailed questions. Do I emit this or that? Do I have child labor in my supply chain or so? Which gives me only a few impacts. But I must ask the question all the way down to the basic principle level. And that makes it possible to look at the whole system by one and the same framework and make various aspects of the society cooperate. This is an example of the opposite, the long list of toxins in mother's milk. Can you, without being toxicologist, understand how impossible it is to monitor a system that complex, that looks like this, and chasing those compounds one by one? We must ask ourselves, what is a society that does not allow chemicals to increase, which is much more important than to find the one of those which is most deleterious to us. And now we can play chess, because now we have design principles by which we can redesign our energy systems, agriculture systems, and indeed our businesses. I was invited a few years ago to UNEP in Paris to lead a work with pioneers, all kinds of tools. I met with Wackenhagen, who is behind ecological footprint things. I met Bio Schmidt-Bled behind Factor 10, Zero Emission, was Dr. Suzuki from Tokyo. And together with them, applying this framework, which is an over-embracing framework, defining sustainability in a rigorous way, we could study how all those tools connect. So we could show that footprinting, for instance, is a beautiful way of communicating to the general public how large areas we occupy from certain behaviors, technical systems. But it doesn't at all talk about substitutions or how to get rid of different management systems, which the 4 system conditions can tell us. And the same goes with Factor 10 and so forth and so on. So by studying any organization, for instance this area, being compliant with basic principles of sustainability, in what way can I support 8001 help us? In what way can this or that tool help us? And that can help us to explain what those tools are actually doing and what they are not doing. Then we published that in the UN's Journal for Cleaner Production, which is their official organ, and it was the most downloaded article ever published in Green Leaf publication, because people are dreaming of comprehension in this arena. We have done the same with all kinds of societal problems one by one. Okay, agriculture in the future is sustainable. What is the problem we have over there today? What are the potentials, the technical solutions, and so on and so forth? We've done the same, of course, with communities, and this is one of the prime examples. This very community is one of the prime examples in the world right now. So next time I show this, you will be out there. And I'm traveling around the world, boasting my guts out from all those success stories. So believe me, you will be part of what I will tell the world. And we've done the same in business, of course. Business executives, top management from IKEA, Nike, and so forth. And I will give you a quick story now. It's only a few stories, and then we have an open session. IKEA, they threw out PVC and trashed PVC because it didn't comply with those principles. They turned to the polymer industry and they said, well, it's much better than other materials. And IKEA said, that was not our point. Our point is that it doesn't comply with those principles. And we will ask the same questions to the suppliers of those other materials. What about you guys? And eventually they had to trash it because these guys didn't listen. And then Nike, trained by the United States in the United States, trashed it by the same reason. And eventually Hydropolymers, the largest manufacturer of PVC in our part of the world, turned to us very angry and said, what are those system conditions and this bloody framework? What is it? And we told them that this is generic. I mean, we haven't asked IKEA or Nike to do anything. We've just given them a generic framework, and they have drawn their own conclusions. And they said, what is this framework? And there are a number of professors in chemistry and so forth in that company. They looked at it. And they found it very difficult to find the gaps or flaws in this. Eventually they got obsessed. They couldn't get out of it. So now they have demonstrated on the web what they have to do to comply with those principles, and shown the world that this is what we have to do. This is the gap, and this is what we are going to do, and this is what we have already done. And then they ask Greenpeace, guys, you are sharpening your knives every day against us. If we do this, are we then sustainable? And Greenpeace says, yes, if you comply with those principles, you are sustainable, but we don't think you will do it. We don't think that you will manage that. And then Hydro responds, watch us. And that's exactly the tension that we want to do. We want to be helpful in creating that kind of tension. And the NATO step does not have the job to guess if they will make it or not. We only have the job to make them understand how far away they are from sustainability and that they will suffer an increase in financial risk from not paying attention to it. So, we're closing up to the end. The good thing is that it has been possible to demonstrate the self-benefit to do this. You don't need to be an altruistic lover of people or nature to do it. If you only think about money, and if you're long-term greedy as a business leader, you can still apply this model. It has been possible to produce a science-based framework that can be helpful for top management to help their experts in their companies to come up with their drill holes and help top management to launch systematic plans to arrive at sustainability and thereby decrease their financial risk. And it has been possible to grow the number of positive role models around the world doing this, but there are many problems that remain. One is that it is not an obvious competitive advantage to sharing knowledge in business. On the contrary, when we started this, we had to promise IKEA back 14 years ago not to teach any other furniture company this, so that they could be alone. But we said this is unethical to IKEA. We were very small at the time. We didn't say that. We said this is unethical. And then IKEA said, okay, but we want to be alone for 2 years. And that got me, because I felt if we can do this with IKEA for 2 years, we need those 2 years anyhow to be concentrated and really help them. And if they then become successful, other furniture companies will come after them. So I kind of rescued myself. Another problem is a weak political leadership on sustainability. Mass media focus on sensations rather than solutions, you all know that. And just think about yourself. You're sitting on a train, tired, looking at the newspaper, and on one side you see those people having merged forces around something important, such as the people here in Ashland. And on the other page, you see that the Prime Minister in France probably is abusing children sexually or something like that. Can you imagine for your inner eye how your neck muscles in a way pulls your head to this position? And this is not anything to be ashamed of, because the human mindset should react on sensations. We must react on sensations. It's a survival mechanism. If you're out walking in the street and you hear beautiful violin played there and an enormous sound to the left, you must turn to that first. But it doesn't mean that you like sounds and noise better than music. So the problem is that we are doing all those sensations instead of paying attention to that long-term story or meaning. And we must transform mass media to help us with that as well, not only serve as sensations all the time. In Sweden, in the biggest buildings around in the cities, they know more about sex life than they know their neighbors. I mean, this is ridiculous, the way we are paying attention to completely useless type of information in comparison to that big story that connects us all, because we have to create a sustainable world together. And in order to do so, we need each other. To that end, we need leadership. And again, we must come back to the structured overview. And I will just give you 2 stories from my previous experience, and then it's over. Then we can have an open dialogue. One bad and one good about coming out of drill holes. At my hospital, Huddinge Hospital, which is the biggest university hospital in Sweden, linked to Karolinska Institute with its science and so on. Eventually, we elected one guy to coordinate a series of lectures. And this poor chap asked a lot of faculty members from all around at the hospital to teach each other. And at that big kick-off day, all professors were there. And it was so beautiful. And flowers all over. And the next year, we were repeating this every other week, every Wednesday we had these lectures. There was still a professor babbling up there, had the stamina to go for it, and a few people were half asleep, hardly hearing what he said, and the others were back in their drill holes. Why? Because this series of lectures had demonstrated to everybody that it really didn't make sense. They didn't understand what these professors said. They were so deep in their drill holes, and they were so afraid that they would be perceived as superficial. So they all the time talked about how exciting stuff is going on deep down in the drill holes, which left everybody without understanding, because we are so far away from each other now, so it was impossible to understand more or less. So in the risk of being perceived as superficial, they choose to be irrelevant. Now I will give you the beautiful example. It's called clinical conferences. What is that? It's so easy to understand. Mrs. Anderson is going to die from cancer, and unless we save her. And today we rescue far above 50%. And by that I mean cure. And at my ward, even higher numbers than that, because we selected extremely aggressive cancers by which we could treat them with bone marrow transplants, and the results have become so good lately to that technology. Children with leukemia, for instance, that died 100% a few decades ago, we rescued to 90% today, and they live all their lives afterwards, so it's phenomenal. A clinical conference is then around Mrs. Anderson, who's going to die. And to make that, to avoid that, we need pathologists, so that the diagnosis is exact. Then we need the radiotherapist, the surgeon, the medical doctor, the pharmacologist, we need the physiotherapist, we need the nurses, we need the social workers that can support the whole family. Otherwise, Mrs. Anderson will not put up with this tough treatment. And today we cure them in this way. And none of these professional groups can do it on their own. So suddenly we need each other, right? We need each other. And there is no more beautiful endeavor, because we are so social, than to need each other and to dare needing each other. And then people come out of that drill holes, and Mrs. Anderson is the purpose of it all. So there is only one way of getting out of the drill holes and make better use of all the competence there. Purpose. We must have purpose. It must be purposeful. And the purpose must not be flaky, philosophical, that won't make it. It must be concrete, concise, tangible. And today, Mrs. Anderson is the whole world, and is suffering from a lethal disease. And to make that, to avoid that, we need politicians, we need business, which are the engine of society, the economical engine. We need scientists, we need each other. But we must then not define this in a diffuse way. That's why we need this endeavor. And the next step, final slide, is today working by, previously we have worked with one community after another, one university after another, one business after another. Now we want those people to step up as statesmen and start to work together. And today I see this very area as a sort of hub for municipalities around the United States, because you are so proactive, and it would be just great to link you up and hook you up to the best Canadian municipalities doing this, the best Swedish ones, and well, to the best Swedish ones we already hooked up, but we need to do this at the global level. And then to more universities, more businesses paying attention to what you're doing. So that's the whole endeavor. Thank you so very, very much.
Difficulties with implementing in the short term, or perhaps I misunderstood you.
Yeah, very good question. So how do you merge short term with long term? Well, the trick is to find solutions that are good for business today, at the same time as they serve as chess moves that lay the ground for the next move and so on, so that they can make money on them tomorrow. And if they say there are no such chess moves, we say, are you sure? Have you scrutinized all possibilities? And then we engage them in a dialogue, and eventually they may find efforts that are better even in the short term at the same time as they open doors in the future. So it's about more consideration, more thoughtful deeds. And I can give you a funny example that may shock you. This is from Shell, asking that particular question, and also asking a little bit about the future potentials in the system, because they are aware that it's difficult to raise enough renewable energy in due time, and so forth and so on. But however, that is not an excuse for going on with fossil fuels as if nothing had happened. You know, we often hear this. We can't go for renewables until they exist and until they are implemented. It's as smart as saying, I will not start exercising until I'm fit. So we must go step by step. And then when Paul Walken delivered this talk to top management of Shell many years ago in the United States, he had the funnel, assistant conditions and everything, and he didn't say a word about fossil fuels or energy systems. He talked about furniture and farming or whatever, so that they were completely calm in their tummies when he explained the model, how it works and so forth. And then when he was done and had explained what, now this one is fading. I wonder what we can do to get the picture back. They turn it on. Well, I think I can do without it. Doesn't matter. I can do it. Then, when he'd done, he had drawn the funnel and everything, and then one of the top managers said to Håkan, Mr. Håkan, first of all, I would like to give you a little compliment. So it started bad, because Paul realized that now some serious criticism will soon surface. And then he said, Mr. Håkan, you haven't once said that we are running out of fossil fuels, and that makes me so pleased. We have so many flaky NGOs running around saying that we are running out of fossil fuels, but we have so much coal minerals that we can produce petroleum for hundreds of years. Instead, you have talked about the waste from the system, creating the walls of the funnel. And I must say, that's very compelling, and not only that, it's true. That's the problem we have. But now I will return to what makes me so critical. It is not intellectually honest to draw the walls of the funnel like that, leaning inwards so much as you have done, Mr. Håkan. Assumedly, you have done it to cause some kind of anxiety here at Shell, who are living large scale for violating your first principle, extracting matter from the Earth's crust and allowing it to increase as waste in the system, carbon dioxide and so forth and so on. But you, Mr. Håkan, you yourself said during your presentation that there is no way scientists can foresee ecotoxic thresholds in the system because of complexity. Couldn't it be that the walls of the funnel look like that for us, only leaning in slightly so that we can go on at least 80 more years in selling petroleum, and maybe the disturbed climate systems we are seeing now will ease up a little bit, maybe natural problems caused by natural systems themselves are contributing a little bit as well. So that would give us a much longer lifespan. Couldn't it be like that? And he looked at him in an aggressive way. And Paul then pulled something off that I probably wouldn't have pulled off. But he, in an elegant way, he said, within a typical warm, American, engaged smile, exactly my point. And nothing else. And then these guys, he knew that they are not stupid, they are top management at Shell, right? So it only took 5 seconds for another of them to say, but then it could look like this. Since we don't know at all, and the same warm smile. Exactly! So by only saying exactly twice, the whole idea came to their own awareness. They suddenly got it themselves. Who has the burden of proof? When you are running something that is inherently unsustainable, that has no future. If some more hurricanes are increasing severely enough, we can't go on. And sooner or later, that is the issue, right? If that is what Mother Nature will do to us. This is like being out on the highway. You are running your car at 90 kilometers per hour, and it's misty and foggy, so you can only see, say, a few hundred meters or so ahead of the bonnet. But you know that ahead of you on that highway, there is an abyss, and then a drop, and it's over. But you don't know exactly where it is. What do you do in a car like that? It's a matter of personality, you know. But most people find it extra scary to not know where it is, because the burden of proof is suddenly yours, right? So it's, for most of us, it's squeaking brakes and then taking another route. It's more spooky than knowing that it is 4.5 miles ahead or whatever. So what did they do? Well, they started to talk about the resource potential. How much energy do we have access to if we are going to stop using petroleum and nuclear power, which are both inherently unsustainable? Well, this is a picture of the Ashland Dam in Egypt. It shows you how large area on a map of Egypt that is drenched to create enough height in the high dam. Below to the left, you see a ridiculously small yellow square covered with photovoltaics, giving exactly as much power as the whole dam. And those photovoltaics are mediocre old-timers. Today we are already half of that yellow square. Or if you would like other figures, the sun is giving us 13,000 times more energy than the whole world is using. So if 5% covering the desert of Sahara will give us as much energy, all energy sources included, just as an operational numbers, there are much more efficient energy systems around the corner. If anybody would be interested, I can talk about it. But we have never had an energy problem, and we never will. We have materialistic problems following our energy flows. We are polluting the system with our energy flows. But it is not an energy problem as such. And the potential for energy is enormous. It is an economical problem. How can we implement those modern technologies financially to make it happen? Who said this? This relates back to that dialogue between Karl-Henrik and that top executive of Shell. It's actually one of the executives at Shell. Hydrogen is an excellent carrier of energy that we can then produce by photovoltaics or wave power, wind power, or hydropower, or by geothermal or whatever. And where did this show up? This is in the leading Swedish coverage. It's actually a neoconservative one that do not like sustainability at all. They think it is a threat. They think that if you don't want to pollute, you are probably a communist. And yet they learned from top executives at Shell that they are putting photovoltaics on poor people's roofs in South Africa and allowing them to purchase electricity from those photovoltaics by smart cards. So they were learning the business around this as well. Why? Because they understand that if we are to survive in this funnel, huge amounts of dollars must be pumped into this funnel. Just like when Bill Gates is pumping in money to vaccination programs of poor children in the developing world and so forth and so on. That must happen if we are to survive. Who will earn that money? Those who know how to develop sustainable energy systems, or those who do not know how to do it. So it's a survival issue in the long run to learn how to do it. Shell doesn't know where the abyss is on that road, but they have surely enough decided to step by step move away from what they are doing today to the future energy systems, because they want to supply energy also tomorrow. So, the final one. Do we have any restrictions in this system? From a back cost perspective, we have done these calculations of all kinds of areas. It will certainly not be food. We can produce food for everybody around the world, complying with those principles. It's not energy. We have more than enough renewable. We have more or less the technique already. It's surely not money. I mean, it's a ridiculous question in a way. Can we afford to survive? But it's nevertheless, it puts attention to who shall pay when. It must be a sort of negotiation when we go for it. There's not lack of selfish incentives either. The only problem we have, the only constraint we have is, can we get the leaders up there in time? That's the only issue we have. That we have, after serious study, concluded. And my guess, when it comes to that, is of no more value than your guesses. I don't have a clue if we will get enough leaders until the costs for unsustainability will skyrocket to the extent that we can't afford to do anything about this. There are points of no return, of course, but I don't know whether. I only know that the number of leaders wanting to do this are exponentially growing right now. And that is very, very promising. And you are amongst those leaders. I want to thank you so very much for that.
Can you help me understand your 4 principles and how you apply them a little better? Your example there, you're talking about how photovoltaics are a positive step, yet they represent crust materials that are concentrated and extracted. And so
you can concentrate,
kind of radical, and I'm trying to figure out how you actually apply them.
Right. Well, it's suddenly large groups are smart together because their minds are informed by one and the same overarching principle for sustainability. So they ask themselves, if we will go for photovoltaics, does that inherently mean that matter must increase in concentration the way it must if we take fossil fuels up and burn it off? And they say it could if we, for instance, allow them to erode and to erosion happen to them, throw them away, it rains on them and what's not, and then uranium, ruthenium, and all kinds of materials will start to increase in concentration. But the whole point of a photovoltaic is that it is valuable, you put it up there, and you don't burn it, and then you can recycle it because you control it, and it has a value attached to it. Just like stainless steel, containing nickel, which is increasing today, but not from stainless steel, because it doesn't erode. And the value of stainless steel is so high that it's recycled. So we don't have that problem with stainless steel, neither will we have it with photovoltaics. So you can now modulate the system and ask yourself those kind of questions you just did, because that is an extremely essential question, so that we don't go from one problem to another. And that's why we need 4 principles, and we scrutinize everything we do, different technologies, and now suddenly large groups and assemblies of experts can become smart together because they have this shared methodology and they can co-create those solutions. And we see it happening over and over again in businesses and in local governments.
So sometimes there's a solution that may be a trade-off between different principles?
That's another question. In the backcasting perspective, there is no trade-off. But on the route then, we must make trade-offs all the time. That's a very smart question. But I will give you one example. IKEA said the following. We want to sell low-energy lamps. That's good for people. It saves energy. Scientists said that they have more mercury in them. Now the question is it from a trade-off position? Is it better to pollute a little bit with mercury than to waste energy, or is it the other way around? And they asked scientists about this. And the scientists immediately divided themselves into 2 camps. One said, yes, it's better, and the other said, no, that's worse. And both scientific groups finished their publications by saying, but how it really is, future science must show us. When they said that, they didn't have a clue what kind of science they were referring to, because there are different dimensions on wasting energy or polluting with mercury. So you can't. It's like comparing apples with rollerblades. And then a business executive said, wait, we are backcasting. There's only one intellectually sound way of dealing with trade-offs, and that is from a backcasting perspective. And then he asked a rhetorical question to his peers at IKEA. In the future, do we sell lamps that provide low energy to people? Of course. Do they pollute with mercury? No. Do they pollute with any other element that is increasing systematically? Of course not. And they are low energy, right? Yeah. So how do we get there? We must play chess and make the trade-offs on the way. And the solution was the following. They asked the global market, who can sell low energy lamps with the lowest possible content of mercury? That was the first move. This Chinese raised his hand and said, I can. They checked him out, and the mercury content of his lamps were 1/3 of the competitors, Philips, Osram, and the others. And then they said to him, would you like to make business with IKEA at the global level? And he fainted. This was a small supplier in China. And he said, yes, you know. And then he said, on one condition, that you systematically apply your expertise to get rid of the remaining amounts of mercury as well, so that you step by step move ahead in that direction. And he said, okay, I'm willing to try. And then they rubbed that in the face of Osram and Philips and said, we have to go to China because you guys have 3 times more mercury in your low energy lamps and we want to get rid of it completely. Do you think that that in any way influenced their willingness to put some money into this pot, and the solution has already come. So this is how you can deal with trade-offs. You do it from the background, exactly in line with your question.
Yes, I've heard the word sustainable used a lot in relation to cutting down forests. And I wonder if you could talk a little bit about that, your thoughts on sustainability in relation to forests. My feeling is that still looking at it in terms of the dollar. Dollar sign still wins large.
Yeah, well, logging and forestry in general has many aspects. One is that it is presumptively a renewable source. It's beautiful, it's renewable inherently, so it has a beautiful future. But in line with your question, you can run forestry in a way that is inherently unsustainable, mainly violating the third of those principles. For instance, clear-cutting very large areas so that wind erosion and other types of erosion does the rest, and then you don't get the same situation back again if the forest can't go back. And this is a big problem. At the same time, you destroy biodiversity and so forth. And we have written a consensus document about forestry. So through the agencies here working with sustainability, you can get access to this if you like. We have translated it into English as well. Applying those 4 principles to what sustainable forestry means.
What would be a simple answer? I guess people in my community say, what can an individual do with these basic concepts?
Yeah, well, individuals can purchase consciously, which is a very, very nice way of doing it, and you feel good about it. And eventually you can find those organic tomatoes or whatever that even taste better as well. And then you have established a sort of routine that reinforces that you walk the talk, so to speak. You can do the same with washing powders and all kinds of things you buy. You can ask yourself, how do they comply with this way of thinking? You can vote, which is another thing. You can pay attention to the politicians who are proactive and not, and allow that to influence your behavior. And you can talk with your neighbors, which is extremely important, and your children, whatever. So we talk to one another and create communities. I think that would be my prime answer. And another would be, of course, to study this, because if you learn a lot, you may become interesting to listen to, and then eventually people want to hear, and then you can be very influential. So to read about these things as well. I saw, okay, your hand, for you first, and then the lady there, and then I saw your hand, okay?
I wonder if you could expand a little bit on your comments about stories of meaning, and also perhaps with some examples of people working to reestablish those stories if you're aware of that.
Yeah, stories of meaning, of course. If we stick with business, the story of meaning is that story, the myth of the company, and the core values attached to it. That's one story of meaning. We have those in communities. In Sweden, once upon a time, for instance, we had the folkhemmet. It was an extremely strong story of meaning. It was launched by Prime Minister Karl-Henrik Robèrt in 1928, and it was about creating a country which would be like a home for all kind of people. Also the crippled, the disabled, everybody, we would take care of everybody. We took away thresholds so that wheelchairs could pass in easier and so forth and so on. And it just captured, the whole population was captured by that story of meaning. We were just going to do it. And the right wing and the left wing were competing about who could launch the folkhemmet the fastest. So the right wing said, we must have a much more free market, we don't want interference from Big Brother because then we cannot create folkhemmet as fast. And the left wing said, we must have more regulation because otherwise it won't happen, and they were fighting like that. But nobody questioned if it was a good idea, so it captured the people. And that's the way of creating a vision and a story of meaning. At the level of company, some of them don't have it. And they are very, very often very shaky. Other companies have very strong stories of meaning, like IKEA. They want to make the everyday life of people much easier. That's their overriding story of meaning. And then they divide that into furniture principles. I'll give you one story of meaning that evolved. And then I think we almost have to draw a line. Isn't that right? Or do you want to hear more stories? I mean, you guys are amazing. It's okay. I'm here, so let's bring that story. This was McDonald's in Sweden. I'm telling you this story to surprise you. At the time, Swedish McDonald's had the lousiest possible reputation in Sweden. They were at the very bottom in the eyes of NGOs. It was considered as a superficial, buy and throw away kind of model. And they didn't have the rigor around social and ecological awareness. And one day, the CEO phoned me up, top CEO of the whole Swedish McDonald's, and said the following: I can tell you that I'm so tired of social and ecological sustainability because we really believe we're good at it. We have been working for years about that. And each time we try to do just a little minimal improvement, we get trashed. It's not worth anything. Recently, we changed from plastic covers to paper covers to do some good. And this time it only took one day for a professor to appear in Swedish TV and explain that paper weighs more than plastic. Consequently, it consumes more fossil fuels in transport of paper than we save in raw materials of plastic, so we've done a down bargain. What shall we do? I mean, I can't put up with this anymore. And I said, probably you didn't know how to respond to the professor because you didn't have a plan, a definition of where you were going. So you couldn't explain that this was a chess move, probably. Yeah, that's right. We didn't know how to respond. What do you mean, defining where you want to be and so forth? And he got excited and interested and eventually learned about it. Then he was the principal teacher at McDonald's in Sweden. So he saw that every franchisee learned this. Everybody was trained. Systematically, they step by step moved away to renewable energy. Step by step bought more and more organically farmed meat for the burgers and mixed them to all burgers because they didn't want to end up to sell, ecological future burgers and the traditional ones. They couldn't do that, so they mixed it into the food. They started to sort waste in 17 fractions behind the wall there, so the customers never saw it. They became more and more radical, and eventually, 2 years after the training, the CEO phoned me up and asked me the following strange question. Do we need hamburgers at all in the sustainable society? Which told me how deep going this issue had. And you can just imagine when he phoned me up and said, what shall we do? I'm so tired of this. If I had said, do we need hamburgers at all? I mean, that would be the end of further discussions. But when he asks that question 2 years later, it's power in the question, right? So he became even more radical and he launched veg burgers, and now he put demands on renewable energy, transformed the whole industry, and each step improved on their rating as regards respective company, and eventually ended up amongst the top 10. And then the top management of McDonald's United States came over the Atlantic and wondered what was going on, because he was improving the bottom line business all the way, avoiding problems, saving resources, doing smart business, and eventually he became vice president of the global McDonald's, head of corporate strategy, because this is strategic thinking. This is sort of story of how one gives the other, and he created a story of me. It wasn't wrong with us. Everybody knew us. And when the American top management came over, and they thought they were going to meet with hamburger salesmen, and they met with warriors on the sustainability arena, stunned. Yes, sir.
How can small groups work and scrutinize principles that you're talking about when we spend so much of our money and spend so much of our money to watch these it appears to me that in order, like in Sweden, practice stay local. Here, I can
Well, it's very, very important that everybody acts within the constraints that exist. So if you have to send a lot of tax away, then that's a constraint. But it doesn't mean that you can't move systematically, step by step, within those constraints towards sustainability and prepare yourself for the future. So no matter where the constraints are, you can always do it. And we just ran an ABCD workshop today in line with this planning here, and a lot of smart ideas came up. And the name of the game is to try to find cost-neutral solutions early on, or maybe even slightly better ways of doing it, for instance by saving energy doing this or that. Then you get some money back, then you can reinvest that in even more aggressive moves, and this is how it gets going. So it's very important. And by the way, some organizations think that we are so small, so maybe it doesn't matter what we do. But in fact, true change in society always happens in the periphery. It starts in the periphery. It's not the central administration that come up with the really brilliant new ideas. It's nerds and whatever in the periphery coming up with ingenious ideas, and everybody thinks, yeah, it's because it's in the countryside. And then eventually that changes the whole world. Time after time this has been repeated. That's why in fairy tales it's always the swine shepherd that eventually marries the princess. It's because true change happens in the periphery, not in the central establishment. This won't come from Washington, never believe that. It will come from you guys. And then you merge forces with others, networks are created, and eventually they have to comply. That was even described in the Rio Conference document from '92. This will happen at the level of local government, it will not happen at the central government. That's why local governments are so important, because they are big enough to make a difference, and they are small enough to be close to people and problems.
You talk about your efforts to educate all of the households in Sweden. I've reached out with somewhat civic activities, a lot of people they just don't get involved and they might read about something and then not jump on board. Did you have to do additional efforts in order to get ordinary households to buy into this?
Did I have to make
Were there additional steps, that educational campaign to all the households in Sweden to get people thinking about this?
One was by sending it to the schools, which of course created a drive for more learning, so we were suddenly invited to the kinds of schools which we had planned to do. Another was that when this was sent to all households, it was like asking decision makers for help in front of the whole population. So suddenly I was invited to Parliament in hearings about energy and sustainability. I was invited to boardrooms of leading executives. That's how it all started, because it was a sort of impact. I saw this recently repeated in Whistler, a community about your size, where the mayor saw to that an education material was sent to every household. And that was one way of bringing the public into a dialogue that was then going. So I've seen this way of doing it repeated. But, yeah. That kind of responded to the question.
Yes.
In this 16-year effort that you have put forward since that original paper that was so highly criticized by your colleagues, how do you square your time away from your work as an oncologist and devoting all this time traveling the country and the world? These are times away from your...
How can I do this and being a doctor and all that? And in the early days, I tried to do both. And then eventually this took off to Australia and all kinds of countries wanting help to support it. And eventually I was working so hard that my wife literally said that there is a smell of burnt rubber from your study. And this is ridiculous, you are not sustainable. So I first of all, I stopped being a medical doctor. My oldest student took over being head of the clinic. And when my last doctoral dissertation had defended his doctoral dissertation, my last PhD student had defended his doctoral dissertation, I resigned also from Karolinska Institute and cancer science. And now I'm only doing science around this. So I have PhD students at my university doing this kind of stuff. And I have the largest head office as the clinic. So I still have two, but a new kind of endeavor.
You mentioned in passing that nuclear power is not sustainable, and there's a huge resurgence of promotion of that industry in our country right now. How would you confront the industrialists that want to bring more nuclear power plants to the world?
Well, I can give you a story again, but I probably can't do this on my own, but to do very serious studies together with people in a neutral way, applying the framework, putting yourself in the future and asking them, what would it take to develop nuclear power to comply with those principles? And you end up in so huge investments that it simply doesn't make any sense. And you can come to that conclusion together with all kinds of scientists. I did this once. I was invited to one of the Swedish nuclear power plants, Ringhals, and even I was nervous. How was I going to apply this model to Ringhals? You know, and these guys were gathered in a whole room. It was 150 executives, top management, the big CEO was there, and so forth and so on. And I didn't say one word about energy. I trained them on all kinds of other things. And then we had lunch, and then in the afternoon, one of them came to the inevitable question, can you apply that model to Ringhals? And I said, I would be a stupid, stupid person if I first explained to you how important it is that this model, this ABCD, is run by experts. And then I would put myself, a medical doctor, in front of one of the leading teams in the world on nuclear power, explaining to you how it should be run. Never ever. But I would be happy to be your humble secretary and take notes while you run the model. So A was already done, which is explaining how it works, and then we went to B. Assess today from a point of winning in the future. I said, system condition number 1. Is there anything at all, whatever it would be, that comes from the Earth's crust, and that is increasing in concentration anywhere in the system due to what you are doing? I refrained from smiling. I was looking curious to get the answer. And there was a long silence, and then one of them said after this, and I just let that silence be. And I stood there with my pen by the whiteboard and read it, and I let that silence sink in, and then one of them said, yeah, uranium comes from the Earth's crust. And then another one said, but it's very, very little, because it is so energy intensive. Oh, well, another one said, we are mining huge amounts, it's tons, to only get grams of uranium, and it rains on it, and low energy isotopes are increasing due to the mining itself. By the way, we use enormous amounts of fossil fuel as support energy to the system. We have heavy elements in the machinery, we don't even know what to do with it. So they started to give me more and more examples on violation of the first principle. And then it's subsided. I didn't get any more suggestions, and none of them said paper clips at the office or something ridiculous like that. Because when you are informing your brains by basic principles, the main problem surfaces. Small things disappear. Quite opposite to not having basic principles. Then we seek knowledge, we drown in information. In Sweden we say filtering mosquitoes and swallowing camels. I don't know why, we don't have any camels in Sweden, but by that I mean we fail to see the big picture because we don't have the basic understanding. Then we turn to the second principle. Does your plant in any way create new things, molecules that in any way... And there was a long silence here. Yeah, we create, there are some new isotopes that are getting out in the heating water and so forth, and the waste, of course, but that can be solved and so forth. And after a while, people said, well, and that was also a question. This, well, happened over and over again. For instance, when it came to the third principle, do you remove natural the systems in any way. And then one of them said, you can trash that right away. We have some problems with 1 and 2, but not with 3. We have a little plant, power plant, we put it there on the green, and then we send the electricity wires. And then another person said, well, in the mining process, we are strip mining so large areas and then polluting them with physical condition number 1 and 2, that in Canada they refer to them as national sacrifice areas. And I was stunned, I was shocked by the terms. So what happened in this group? They were torn between the tension that on the one hand, being loyal to their company, on the other, not appearing stupid, and the second of those incentives always win. There is no way that you can have a whole bunch of intelligent people playing the role of being dumber than they are just to be loyal to their company. It never happens. If you don't laugh, if you're not arrogant, if you're curious, really want to learn, you're poor, a little bit confused, medical doctor, you want to learn about it, you take notes, it surfaces, you get all the problems. And then we turn to the fourth problem. System condition 4. Is this good for people? And one of them said, it's definitely much better for people because look at climate change and drenched, how that disaster. I mean, this is much, much better for people, much safer and so forth. Well, now this was routine. Another one said, we only have 2,000 terawatt hours globally of nuclear power compared to 80,000 terawatt hours fossil. We are comparing different things here. And with those futile 2,000 terawatt hours, we are looking at the huge list of problems that are inherently unsustainable and that we haven't solved yet. If we are going to curb, say, half of fossil fuels by use of nuclear power, it means that we must expand from 2,000 terawatt hours to 40,000 terawatt hours, meaning 20 times more nuclear power than we already have. And then another one said, maybe we can make them much more efficient so that we get less problems. For instance, swinging to breed reactors. Breed reactors, they produce plutonium, for God's sake. Would you like to have 20 times more energy planted around the world and give all terrorists plutonium and then say that you're doing it for people? What do you mean? In front of my eyes, they phased out nuclear power. And then one of them said, well, I must say we have already known deep in our hearts that this is a sort of, within brackets of history, of course it has a long-term future, but we hate the idea of the government forcing us to do this. We think that it should happen on market conditions, for instance by allowing us to pay our own insurance and not having a capitalist way of sharing profit and a socialist way of paying the costs. And by the way, we think that they should close down Oskarshamn before, because that's a really lousy power plant. So now they started to talk about in what order we should phase it out tonight. So it was very fascinating actually to see. And this has been repeated over and over again. Don't do it for people. Allow people to do it themselves. And the solutions become much, much smarter than if you're trying to shove it down the throats of people.
Have you had any interaction with the International Fusion Reactor Project?
Sorry?
Have you had any interaction with the International Fusion Reactor Project?
No, I have not had any interaction of that kind. But what I am against is to make legislation against science and development of new types of technologies. For instance, there is a Spanish nuclear physicist who has come up with the idea of producing thorium reactors, which is a completely different type of technology. And in that technology, you can destroy dangerous waste from previous reactors and so forth and so on. I am for that kind of science, but I am against allowing this to just go on because some people believe that other things are worse. It's like choosing between plague and cholera. And if you choose between plague and cholera, you get the either. And we would rather like to be helpful in the future. But I would like to take part in any of that, but I have not been invited. So.
Dr. Robèrt,